The car pulled out of the driveway, and I waved goodbye with a smile plastered on my face. My brother David and his wife Jennifer were headed to Seattle for some big business conference. 3 whole days away. They'd asked me last minute to watch little Ethan, their 7-year-old son. The boy who hadn't said a single word in almost 5 years. I turned around, ready to ask Ethan if he wanted to play video games or maybe build something with his Lego blocks. But he wasn't reaching for his tablet like usual. He wasn't pointing at pictures to tell me what he wanted. He was just standing there in the hallway, staring straight at me with eyes that looked way too serious for a little kid. And then my nephew, the child everyone believed couldn't speak, the little boy who communicated only through head nods and hand gestures, opened his mouth. "Aunt Rachel, don't sign the papers in the drawer. Uncle Mark is stealing from you." His voice was clear, perfect, like he'd been talking his whole life. My heart stopped beating. I'm not kidding. For 3 full seconds I forgot how to breathe. Let me back up about 8 hours because you need to understand how I ended up in this nightmare. My name is Rachel Torres. I'm 30 years old and I work as a financial analyst for a tech startup here in Portland, Oregon. Pretty boring life, honestly. I spend most of my time staring at computer screens and drinking too much coffee. My therapist says I avoid relationships because I'm scared of being hurt. My therapist is probably onto something. That morning started like any other Sunday. I was making breakfast, enjoying the quiet when my phone rang. It was David, my younger brother. We're only 2 years apart, but sometimes it feels like we grew up in different families entirely. "Rachel, I need the biggest favor," he said. His voice had that edge to it. The one that meant he was stressed about something. Turns out, he and Jennifer had to fly to Seattle for an emergency conference. Some client crisis that needed handling right now. They needed someone to watch Ethan while they were gone. "Of course," I said immediately. Because that's what I always do for David. I drop everything. I rearrange my schedule. I say yes before thinking it through. I actually loved spending time with Ethan. Even though he couldn't talk, we had our own way of connecting. He'd show me his drawings, and I'd make up stories about them. We'd watch cartoons together, and I'd do silly voices that made him smile. There was something special about that kid. Something that made you want to protect him. See, Ethan stopped talking when he was about 2.5. At least that's what David and Jennifer always told everyone. They said the doctors called it selective mutism. Some kind of anxiety thing that made him go completely silent. They said specialists had examined him, and there was nothing physically wrong. He just couldn't speak, wouldn't speak. I'd been working in Chicago when Ethan was born, so I missed his first couple years. By the time I moved back to Portland 18 months ago to be closer to family, Ethan was already silent. I never questioned the story. Why would I? David was my brother. Parents know their own children, right? Our dad, Robert, had passed away 4 years ago. Sudden heart attack. Just 58 years old. He was the kind of dad who coached Little League and fixed neighbors' cars for free. Losing him felt like losing the sun. After Dad died, Mom started getting sick. Really sick. Stage 4 cancer. She fought for 2 years before she finally lost that battle 16 months ago. Before Mom died, she'd set up something called a living trust. About $900,000. Everything Dad had saved, his life insurance, the money from selling their house. The rules were simple. Both David and I had to approve any major withdrawals together. Mom was smart like that. She knew how to protect things. Mom also left me her vintage jewelry collection and some savings bonds. David got Dad's old truck and the family photo albums. At the time I thought it was fair. Everyone got something meaningful. Now I wonder if Mom saw something I didn't. Anyway, that Sunday morning I drove over to David's house around 11. Nice place in the suburbs. Big yard, new cars in the driveway. The kind of house that screams, "We're doing well." Jennifer met me at the door with a hug. That should have been my first red flag. Jennifer never hugged me. She usually just gave me a tight smile and a small wave. "You're a lifesaver, Rachel." "Seriously," she gushed. Her makeup was perfect. Her outfit looked expensive. Everything about Jennifer always looked expensive. David was loading suitcases into an Uber that had just pulled up. He barely glanced my direction. Just a quick "thanks sis" over his shoulder. He seemed jumpy, nervous, but David was always kind of anxious, so I didn't think much of it. Jennifer walked me through the house like I'd never been there before. Kitchen's here. Ethan's room is upstairs. Remote for the TV is on the coffee table. Standard stuff. Then she opened a cabinet and pulled out a folder. A thick manila folder with papers inside. "Oh, and I almost forgot," she said, her voice suddenly syrupy sweet. "There are some documents in here that need your signature. Just some family trust stuff. Formality really. Your brother already signed. Just needs your name on the dotted line before we get back." She pressed the folder into my hands. Something about the way she said it felt wrong. Too casual. Too rushed. But Jennifer was always a bit pushy, so I just nodded and said, "Sure, I'll look at them." Uber honked. Jennifer grabbed her purse and rushed out the door. "Love you, be good," she called out, though I'm not sure if she was talking to me or Ethan. David followed without another word. I watched the car pull away, watched it disappear around the corner. Then I closed the front door, turned around and found Ethan standing there, staring at me, looking like he was about to tell me the world was ending. "Aunt Rachel, don't sign the papers in the drawer. Uncle Mark is stealing from you." I couldn't move, couldn't think. The folder was still in my hands, suddenly feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. My nephew, the child everyone said couldn't speak, had just warned me that someone was stealing from me. And he said it in a voice that sounded completely normal. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, please smash that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're listening from. I read every single comment, and your support means everything. Now let me tell you what happened next. I set the folder down on the kitchen counter like it might explode. Then I knelt down so I was eye level with Ethan. My hands were shaking. "Ethan," I whispered. You can talk." He nodded slowly. His eyes were huge and scared, but there was something else there too. Something brave. "I always could, Aunt Rachel. Mom made me stop." The room started spinning. I had to put my hand against the wall to keep from falling over. "What do you mean made you stop?" And that's when this 7-year-old boy told me a story that destroyed everything I thought I knew about my family. Ethan wasn't born with selective mutism. He never had an anxiety disorder. That was a lie. Complete fabrication. Until he was 2.5, Ethan talked like any normal toddler. He said, "I love you and more juice please, and read me a story, Daddy." Then one afternoon everything changed. Ethan was playing in the living room with his toy cars. He got thirsty, so he wandered into the kitchen looking for his mom. Jennifer was on the phone. She didn't see the little boy standing in the doorway. Ethan heard words. Big words he didn't fully understand. But some words he did recognize. "Rachel, money, trust fund. Get her out of the picture. She won't even see it coming. She's too trusting, always has been." Ethan was only 2.5. He didn't understand what "out of the picture" meant. But he understood Aunt Rachel. And he understood the cold, mean way his mom said, "too trusting." The next day, innocent and confused, Ethan asked his mother a simple question. "Mommy, what does out of the picture mean? Are we making a picture for Aunt Rachel?" Jennifer's face went white. Then it went hard. She grabbed Ethan's arm. Grabbed it tight enough to leave marks. She pulled him close until they were face to face. "Listen to me very, very carefully," she hissed. "If you ever speak again about anything to anyone, something terrible will happen to Aunt Rachel. Your voice is dangerous now. Every word you say hurts her. If you really love your aunt, you'll never make another sound. Do you understand me?" Ethan loved me. I was the aunt who brought him new coloring books every visit. The one who made funny faces that made him giggle. The one who always had time for him. So Ethan stopped talking. Right then. Right there. He was 2.5 years old, and he made a choice to give up his voice to keep me safe. I sat on that kitchen floor, tears streaming down my face, as this little boy explained the sacrifice he'd made. 5 years. 5 years of silence. 5 years of fear. 5 years of thinking that every word he spoke might somehow hurt the person he loved most. And Jennifer, the perfect mother, the woman who volunteered at school and organized charity fundraisers, had used that fear. She'd weaponized it. She took Ethan to doctors and therapists, playing the concerned parent, collecting her diagnosis, telling everyone it was selective mutism brought on by some mysterious childhood trauma. But she made sure no one ever saw the real medical records. The ones that said there was nothing physically or psychologically wrong with him before that day. I was living in Chicago back then, visiting maybe twice a year. I had no reason to doubt my own brother about his own son. That framed photo on the mantel caught my eye. "World's Best Mom," printed in fancy letters. Jennifer had that photo professionally taken last year. Everyone praised her patience with her special needs child. I wanted to throw that picture through the window. "What else do you know, sweetheart?" asked gently. "What else have you seen?" It turned out that being silent made Ethan invisible. Adults talked freely around him. They assumed he couldn't understand or couldn't tell anyone even if he did. Ethan saw everything. He saw Jennifer practicing my signature over and over on scratch paper, trying to make it look exactly right. He heard phone conversations about the trust and about transferring everything before Rachel notices. He watched his dad become more and more afraid of his mom, agreeing to everything she said, never standing up for what was right. He observed his mother performing for neighbors and friends, putting on the mask of a devoted parent sacrificing everything for her disabled child. And 3 nights ago, Ethan heard something that made him realize he couldn't stay silent anymore. He'd snuck to the top of the stairs like he'd done hundreds of times before. His parents were in the study and they were arguing. While Jennifer was talking, David was mostly just saying okay, and whatever you think is best. "The papers are ready," Jennifer said. "I've got Rachel's signature down perfectly. She'll look at that folder, think it's just routine trust management, and sign without even reading. She always does what I tell her to. She's pathetic that way. What if she actually reads them?" David asked. His voice sounded scared. "She won't. And even if she does, she won't understand the legal language. By the time she figures out we've transferred the entire trust into our names, it'll be done. We'll have the money and she'll have nothing. What about when she finds out? We'll be in Mexico by then, David. New house, new life, new start. I've already got the accounts set up. She can hire lawyers all she wants. Good luck getting money back from another country. No Seattle conference. No client emergency. Just a plan to steal $900,000 from me, forge my signature, and disappear to another country. My own brother." I pulled Ethan into my arms and held him as tight as I could. This brave, incredible child. He'd carried this secret for 5 years. He'd watched his mother lie to everyone. And when it truly mattered, when he knew I was in real danger, he found the courage to speak. "You saved me," I whispered into his hair. "You know that. You absolutely saved me." He hugged me back, his small arms fierce around my neck. "I couldn't let Mom hurt you, Aunt Rachel. Not anymore." I looked at that folder sitting on the counter. Innocent-looking manila folder. Papers that would steal my entire inheritance. Evidence. My tears stopped. Something cold and focused settled in my chest. Jennifer thought she had 3 days to disappear with everything. She thought I'd sign those papers without reading them. She was very, very wrong. The first call I made was to my best friend Casey Mitchell. Casey and I met in college. She became a police detective. I became a financial analyst. Different paths, but we stayed close. She was the kind of friend who helped you move apartments and told you the hard truth when you needed to hear it. She answered on the first ring. "Rachel. What's wrong?" "Casey, I need you to come to David's house right now. Something happened and I can't explain over the phone. Please just come." Something in my voice must have scared her because she didn't ask questions. I'm 20 minutes away. 32 minutes later, she was at the door, still in her weekend clothes, hair in a ponytail. She took one look at my face and immediately hugged me. Talk. So I did. All of it. The folder, the plan, Jennifer's scheme. And Ethan. Sweet, silent Ethan, who had spoken for the first time in 5 years to warn me. When I finished, Casey was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at Ethan, who was sitting on the couch watching us with those big, careful eyes. Casey walked over and knelt in front of him. "You're the bravest kid I've ever met in my entire life," she said softly. "You know that." Ethan almost smiled. It was small, but it was there. Casey stood up, all business now. "Okay, first things first. Those papers need to be examined by a forensics expert. I know someone who can analyze the documents tonight. If there's fraud involved, we'll have proof by morning." She carefully photographed every single page in that folder, front and back. "Next question. What kind of person tries to steal their own sister's inheritance and traumatizes a child?" She shook her head. "I always knew Jennifer was fake. Remember when she told you that haircut made your face look interesting? That wasn't a compliment. That was psychological warfare dressed up as girl talk." I almost laughed. "Almost. What else do we have?" Casey continued. "There's got to be more evidence if she's been planning this for months." I looked at Ethan. "Honey, you said you know where your mom keeps important papers." He nodded and got up from the couch. "In her office. There's a locked cabinet. I know the combination." "How do you know it?" "I watched her open it lots of times. She never thought I was paying attention." He led us to Jennifer's home office. Everything was neat and organized. There was a sleek desk with a computer, filing cabinets, and one locked cabinet with a digital keypad. 3170, Ethan said quietly. "March 17th. That's her birthday." Of course Jennifer would use her own birthday. Made her feel clever. Punched in the code. The cabinet clicked open. What we found inside made me physically sick. First, bank statements from the trust account. Months of activity. Small withdrawals, always under $10,000. Always just below the amount that would trigger automatic alerts. Jennifer had done her homework. The total was about $93,000. Stolen over the past year while I trusted her completely. Second, printed emails between Jennifer and a lawyer in Tijuana, Mexico. They discussed emergency asset transfers and mentioned my mental instability. The meeting was scheduled for day 3 of their fake conference. Third, and this one nearly destroyed me, a file labeled Rachel Mental Issues. Inside were pages and pages of notes in Jennifer's handwriting. Dated entries describing my supposed erratic behavior, my depression, my paranoid episodes. Complete lies. All of it. She was building a case to call me mentally unfit. She was preparing to destroy my reputation so that when I challenged the theft, nobody would believe me. My own sister-in-law was planning to paint me as crazy. That world's best mom photo on the living room wall flashed through my mind. I wanted to shatter the frame. Casey photographed everything. Every document, every date, every lie. "This is premeditated fraud," she said grimly. "This isn't some impulsive mistake. She's been building this for over a year. Maybe longer." I was already organizing it in my head. Financial analyst brain kicking into gear. Dates, patterns, amounts withdrawn each month. Numbers don't lie. These numbers told a very clear story. Casey's phone buzzed. Her contact at the forensics lab had rushed through the document analysis. The results were damning. The signatures on those papers were forgeries. Expert-level forgeries, but forgeries nonetheless. My real signature had a specific loop on the R that Jennifer couldn't quite replicate. Under microscopic analysis, you could see hesitation marks where she'd practiced and corrected. It was proof. Solid, undeniable proof. I thought about my emergency savings account. $12,000 tucked away in a credit union that nobody knew about. My financial advisor told me years ago to always have escape money. Money that was yours alone. I'd followed that advice without telling anyone. Now that money was going to fund my fight. Sometimes boring financial planning saves your life. There was one more call to make. Marcus Chin. We'd been in the same study group back in college. He went to law school while I went into finance. Now he was a prosecutor in Multnomah County. I called him and explained everything. When I finished, there was a long silence. "Rachel," he finally said. "This is fraud, forgery, identity theft, and what Jennifer did to that child. That's coerced silence, psychological abuse. That's serious. Federal level serious. What do I do? You let me handle the legal side. I'll coordinate with local police and contact the FBI. Wire fraud across borders is federal jurisdiction. We'll reach out to the Tijuana lawyer too. He's either a victim or an accomplice. Either way, we find out. And Jennifer and David. They can't know you're onto them. If they get spooked, they could run with whatever cash they have access to. You need to make them think their plan is working perfectly." I looked at that folder still sitting on the counter. I have to pretend to sign it. Make them think I fell for it. Exactly. 3 days of acting. Can you do that? "I can do anything to protect what's mine," I said. And I meant every word. Too. Time to become an actress. I sat in the living room with my phone in my hands. Ethan was next to me on the couch, quiet but alert. Even though he could speak freely now, those years of silence had made him careful. Old habits don't disappear overnight. I dialed David's number. It went to voicemail, which I expected. If they were really at a conference, they'd be busy. Of course, they weren't at a conference. They were in a cheap motel outside Portland, waiting to drive to Mexico. But I had to play along. I made my voice sound confused, a little worried, the kind of voice someone uses when they're overwhelmed. "David, hey, I looked at those papers Jennifer left. There's so much legal language and I don't really understand all of it, but I signed everything like she asked. They're in the folder on the counter. I'll leave them there for when you get back. Hope the conference is going well. Ethan's doing great. We're having fun. See you soon." Hung up. My hands were steady. My heart was ice cold. Casey, who was sitting across from me, gave me a slow clap. Oscar-worthy. Seriously. The confused little sister act. Perfect. "I learned from watching Jennifer fake concern my entire life," I said. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. Not a call. Not a worried message asking if I was okay. Not a question about Ethan. Text. "Thanks for signing. You're the best. See you in a couple days." Followed by 3 heart emojis and a smiley face. I stared at those emojis for a long time. She thought she'd won. She thought I'd just handed her $900,000 without a fight. She didn't even pretend to care. Over the next few hours, Casey's husband, who worked in cybersecurity, tracked their digital footprints. Turns out David wasn't as careful as Jennifer. His Facebook still had location tracking enabled. He'd posted a photo yesterday at a gas station. Geotagged to Kaiser, Oregon. Not Seattle. Not a conference center. A gas station 30 minutes from Portland. They were exactly where Ethan said they'd be. While Casey worked on tracking their movements, I went back to the locked cabinet. There had to be more. Jennifer kept records of everything. I found them at the very bottom. Emails. Printed emails between Jennifer and my mother from 2 years ago. When Mom was sick. Dying. Fighting cancer and losing. These emails showed Jennifer begging Mom to change the will. Demanding that Mom leave everything to David alone. "Rachel doesn't have children. She doesn't need this money like we do. We have Ethan to think about. You've always favored Rachel. This is your chance to make things fair." The manipulation. The guilt. The cruelty of pressuring a dying woman. And then I found Mom's response. Handwritten on her personal notepad. The handwriting was shaky, weak, but the words were strong. "I will not punish Rachel for being responsible. I will not reward greed. The trust stays equal. This discussion is closed. Do not ask again. I love you both, but I'm disappointed in the person you've become. She refused. Even dying, she protected me. So Jennifer waited. She waited for Mom to die. And then she started forging. I sat on that office floor, holding my mother's final words, and I cried. Not for myself, Mom. For the betrayal she witnessed before the end. Aunt Rachel. Ethan's voice. He'd come to the doorway. Yes, honey. Are those letters from Grandma? Yes. He walked over and sat next to me. His small hand found mine. Grandma told me something once, he said quietly. When Mom wasn't around. She said, watch people's actions, not their words, little man. Actions show you who they really are. I didn't understand then. I think I do now. I squeezed his hand. Grandma was the smartest person I ever knew. That evening Marcus called with updates. Local police were fully briefed. The FBI had been contacted. Interstate wire fraud, attempting to transfer money across international borders through deceptive means, was absolutely a federal crime. Jennifer had made this a federal case all by herself. The Tijuana lawyer had been contacted. Turns out he'd been having doubts about the whole situation. The signatures looked slightly off. The story didn't quite add up. When authorities explained what was really happening, he agreed to cooperate fully. The trap was set. Day 3. When Jennifer and David showed up at that lawyer's office expecting to finalize their theft, federal agents would be waiting. Your job, Marcus reminded me, is to keep pretending. Keep sending normal updates. Make her think everything is going exactly according to plan. So I did. Day 2 text. Ethan and I made cookies today. He's such a good kid. Papers are all signed and ready. Hope Seattle is fun. Day 3 text. Took Ethan to the park. He's doing great. Can't wait for you guys to get back. Each message, I imagine Jennifer reading it and smiling. Thinking her stupid, trusting sister-in-law had fallen for everything. That same evening, a child advocacy specialist came to take Ethan's statement. Had to be done properly. Videotape. With a child psychologist present. Following every legal protocol. Ethan was nervous. But when the questions started, he sat up straight and used his voice. That voice that had been silent for 5 years. He told them everything. What he heard when he was 2. The threats. The fear. The decision to stop speaking. The years of watching. The night he heard the plan. When it was over, he looked at me through the observation window. That's the most I've talked since I was little, he said. My throat hurts, but it feels good. Like I've been holding my breath underwater forever. And I finally came up. I wanted to run in and hug him, but I had to wait for the proper procedures. When they finally let me see him, I held him so tight. One more day, I told him. Just one more day, and this is over. He nodded against my shoulder. One more day. Day 3. Portland, Oregon. 2 p.m. Casey's surveillance team had tracked Jennifer and David to a motel on the east side. They hadn't gone anywhere near the airport. They'd been hiding in Portland the whole time, waiting for their scheduled drive to Mexico tomorrow morning. I wasn't there in person for the arrests. Marcus set up a secure video feed so I could watch from David's house. Ethan sat beside me, holding my hand. We watched the motel parking lot camera as 2 unmarked police cars pulled up. 4 officers in plain clothes approached room 217. They knocked. David answered the door. He looked terrible. Unshaven, pale, shaking. When he saw the badges, his knees literally buckled. David Mitchell, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and identity theft. Through the video feed, I heard Jennifer's voice from inside the room. David. Who is it? Then she appeared in the doorway. Still put together. Still perfect. But when she saw the officers, her face changed. The mask dropped for just a second. What was underneath was pure rage. There must be some mistake, she said. That honey-sweet voice again. We're just on a business trip. Whatever this is about. Jennifer Mitchell, you're also under arrest. They read them both their rights. Jennifer kept talking, kept trying to explain, to manipulate, to control the situation. But there was nobody left to manipulate. The evidence was overwhelming. As they put handcuffs on my brother, he looked at the camera in the officer's body cam like he knew I was watching somehow. "I'm sorry," he mouthed. Too late. Far too late. Jennifer was still arguing as they led her to the police car. Still insisting this was all a misunderstanding. Still playing the victim. I watched my brother and his wife disappear into separate police cars. "It's over," Ethan whispered. "It's really over." I pulled him close. "Yes, sweetheart. It's over." 3 weeks later. Multnomah County Family Court. The courtroom was small and plain. Fluorescent lights. Uncomfortable chairs. But something important was happening here today. I sat at the front table wearing my best professional outfit. Ethan sat beside me. He'd picked out his own shirt that morning. Blue, his favorite color. He was nervous, but he wasn't silent. The judge reviewed everything. Jennifer's arrest. The fraud charges. The forgery. The stolen $93,000. The 5 years of psychological abuse inflicted on a child. David had given up his parental rights in exchange for a reduced sentence. He'd cooperated with prosecutors, admitted everything, testified against Jennifer. He still didn't deserve to be Ethan's father. And somewhere in his guilty heart, he knew it. The judge looked up from his papers. He was older, with kind eyes and gray hair. "I've reviewed the emergency custody petition," he said. "Given the circumstances and the documented abuse, I'm prepared to make a ruling." He looked directly at Ethan. "Young man, I understand you recently started speaking again after many years. That took real courage." Ethan nodded. "I'd like to ask you directly. Where do you want to live?" Ethan looked at me, then at the judge, then back at me. Then he stood up. 7 years old and braver than most adults will ever be. "I want to live with Aunt Rachel," he said clearly. "She's the only one who ever really listened to me. Even when I couldn't talk, she never made me feel broken. She read to me and played with me and made me feel safe." He paused, then added, "Also, she makes really good pancakes." Quiet laughter in the courtroom. Even the judge smiled. He signed the papers. Emergency custody granted to Rachel Torres. Walking out of that courthouse, I kept looking at Ethan. He was talking about everything. The courtroom. The judge's robe. A dog he saw in the parking lot. Whether we could get pizza for dinner. 5 years of silence. And now he couldn't stop talking. And I never wanted him to stop. That evening we had dinner at my apartment. Or apartment now. I'd already started turning the spare bedroom into Ethan's room. Blue walls. Bookshelves full of new books. Cozy reading corner. "Aunt Rachel," he said through a bite of pizza. "Yeah, buddy. Can I tell you about space?" "Absolutely." What followed was a 20-minute lecture about planets, stars, black holes, and why Pluto deserved better treatment from scientists. I listened to every word. Jennifer faced multiple felony charges. With the evidence so overwhelming, she took a plea deal. I didn't go to any hearings. I had better things to do, like helping Ethan with homework and teaching him to ride a bike and just being present. The trust was audited and frozen. Most of the stolen money was recovered. I became sole trustee, managing it carefully for our future. Mine and Ethan's. I sold Mom's jewelry collection except for one ring. Her wedding ring. I wear it every day now. A reminder of the woman who protected me even from her deathbed. Sometimes I think about that Sunday morning. The moment Ethan spoke and changed everything. If he hadn't been brave, I would have signed those papers. Jennifer would have stolen everything. And I never would have known until it was too late. But Ethan was brave. And now we're building something real. Something honest. Last Sunday, Ethan and I had breakfast on my little balcony. Pancakes and orange juice and morning sunshine. He was telling me about a dream he'd had. Something about a robot who was afraid of butterflies and a superhero whose power was being really good at math. Made no sense. It was perfect. I sipped my coffee and listened. Really listened. This is what family is supposed to be. Not silence. Not lies. Not fear and manipulation. Just this. A kid rambling about robot butterflies. Morning sun through the trees. Two people who chose each other sitting together talking about nothing and everything. Ethan paused and looked at me. Aunt Rachel. Thank you. For what, buddy? For listening. For real listening. Even when I couldn't talk. I reached over and squeezed his hand. Always, Ethan. Always. Sometimes the quietest people carry the heaviest burdens. Sometimes they're just waiting for someone safe enough to finally speak to. Ethan found his voice, and I found my family. Not the one I was born into. The one I chose. The one that chose me back. Our story isn't over. It's just beginning. Thank you so much for watching this story all the way to the end. If this touched your heart, please smash that like button and subscribe to Flex Revenge Unfold for more incredible true stories. More amazing stories are already on your screen. Click one now. You won't regret it. See you in the next one.